streaming because I want this loop to kind of start right now, or resume like this, because I've added a few things to the end of it. As a result, came across the new Stable Diffusion, it seems, or at least the new weights, lend themselves to higher configuration numbers, yielding kind of better results, in my opinion, if I use an initial image as a starting off point. You'll get an idea. You'll first start to see an image that's just like all vaguely grayish elaboration, but then turns into oh wait, I gotta. There we go. Silly me. I was wondering. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna start the scenario again. Oh wait. We don't erase. Well, we try not to erase. We just make a copy. And then we're gonna change the settings. I went back to uterp. Yielded interesting things, but there's still more. Click and be uterp. Let's go to see what happens there.
There once was a first contact generator, made for saying hi to aliens from now and later, blind they from space to the sea, or differing copies of you and me. This will help us meet their daughters in daytime, assuming the following gobshite works as directed. 1. Body of biological entities simultaneously giving their attention to this guided speculation. 2. Enough curiosity and open-mindedness to enable bridging of vastly different methods of communication. Well, ain't that a recipe for some interspecies salutation? Mr. Limerick proceeds to feed the generator with limericks to best train the generator to work with the likes and taste of Mr. Limerick, which is acquired at the least, the very least. And so he begins. There once was a Limerick example, but this is just a preamble. Read on for more famous first to explore, and we'll do our best not to ramble. There once was a reader of poetry, to whom Limerick seemed like magicianry, so they turned to the sample of Limerick examples and learned a few things they'd not known. See, many happy returns and good luck. When it comes to a present, I'm stuck. If you weren't far away on your own special day, I could give you a really nice glass of lager. The incredible Wizard of Oz retired from his business because due to up-to-date science to most of his clients, he wasn't the wizard he was. An amoeba named Max and his brother were sharing a drink with each other. In the midst of their quaffing, they split themselves laughing, and each of them now is a mother. Now with this bowl of shite from our swamp and wretched your blight. You might not have tongues, or fingers, or toes, but will employ our mind as our might. The first contact generator yells and whimpers and badaffles and finds a nice pairing solution. These eccentric beings described thusly. This one's a big fat humanoid slub who wears green trousers with an enormous codpiece from the planet Doom, which means she probably wants sex. That's when you're done being polite. Don't worry about her smell. Just be glad there are none. She would eat you in half-eye. Another alien has been chosen. It's small, but it doesn't seem shy. Though the thing isn't clear, we're not even sure if it talks. Maybe it can read its thoughts. Anyway, this new arrival seems eager, though maybe scared stiff to say hi. And then a robot who must obey its instructions by definition is brought before us. We don't want him too soon, but no doubt he won't last long unless the whole damn ought die off at once all over the place. There goes another race. And finally, we come full circle now. A creature called Sleestacks are here among us, all covered with hairy scales, and they look kinda cool. Asking questions gets hard because the words get mixed around by their language. Still, I ask, what does hi mean? So let's take a break for today and next week, perhaps, perhaps never. There were times when I wished for my former career again, or at least wanted some way of communicating beyond speech and writing. I didn't wish to be taken prisoner or tortured into revealing state secrets. I had those. Rather, I felt a certain kinship with my colleagues at Tredegar. They also spent their lives working toward a purpose outside the immediate requirements of survival. My job used computers as much as theirs, although ours dealt with data processing and communications rather than weapons systems or engineering. Yet the end goal for both teams involved creating something that nobody else had created before. Sometimes I got caught up in a creative mood, only to return after hours exhausted and irritable. The same happened with engineers. Occasionally you came across someone capable of putting ideas together without losing track of reality, such that a design actually worked instead of failing catastrophically. Unfortunately, the world was seldom kind enough to reward people in advance for inventiveness. Those responsible either remained unappreciated while young, died old, or simply failed to make any significant difference. I'd heard it said that the real measure of achievement in science was to discover how to create useful inventions within existing frameworks. I found little consolation in having invented nothing since joining the Institute except better ways of doing boring office administration. Occasionally there were moments of satisfaction, however temporary, when you solved a problem that no one else had yet thought about, or managed to build an elegant model for understanding the universe, or developed a toolkit to aid research. But mostly there was frustration. Failure often occurred at exactly the moment when progress seemed assured, leaving one feeling like a juggler holding 5 balls, wondering whether it should toss 2 back to the audience. One always expected a breakthrough to happen eventually, especially where mathematics was concerned. At first glance, the equations for gravity appeared to involve simple addition and subtraction of quantities involving the mass and distance between objects. Once the speed of light became a fixed reference value, everything fitted snugly inside Einstein's theory of special relativity. You just couldn't travel faster than that. But general relativity required that every bit of matter exerted gravitational force upon every other object, regardless of distance or velocity. In practice, you had to solve differential equations using Newtonian mechanics plus Maxwell's equations of electromagnetism, coupled with the stress-strain relationships determined from experimental observation of atomic bonding forces. Only when quantum effects kicked in did the whole approach become hopelessly impractical, but by then humanity needed to understand subatomic processes, at least theoretically anyway. For several years, the main interest at Tredegar had shifted from general relativistic calculations to the application of computer models based upon cellular automata to predict the behavior of complex systems ranging from the formation and stability of interstellar nebulae to weather forecasts in mid-Europe. Our latest attempt involved simulating the early history of life on Earth, starting around 4 billion years ago and running until the appearance of multicellular animals roughly 120 million years previously. Such a study demanded knowledge of chemical and biological properties throughout a vast range of cosmic environments, from the cores of dying stars to frozen oceans on exoplanets circling distant suns, including conditions appropriate to hypothetical alien biologies. Even the simulation had become so detailed that it occupied millions of processors distributed over multiple continents on 7 distinct planets orbiting 6 nearby stars. As ever, success eluded us. After billions of virtual events, the simulated evolutionary process continued ad infinitum along a path towards increasing complexity without achieving anything interesting or worthwhile. The conclusion reached by my team that biology possessed inherent limits to the possible diversity of structures and functions achievable under universal physical laws did not strike many researchers as particularly novel or exciting. It still drew derision from opponents claiming our results showed evolution couldn't possibly lead anywhere. The trouble lay in trying to define meaningful outcomes during simulations of eons of development when we hadn't defined objective criteria for selecting which paths represented success. Some observers pointed out that natural selection depended less upon the intrinsic properties of individuals than the environment inhabited by their offspring, suggesting that we were studying irrelevant issues. Nobody knew how successful species evolved in a truly unpredictable galactic ecology filled with potentially hostile predators whose senses defied description. The nearest approximation to intelligence we'd encountered so far was the ability of some starfaring races to communicate in terms comprehensible by humans, and therefore apparently meaningless unless interpreted literally. We had a choice, they insisted. Develop our own sense organs, or accept defeat from those able to exploit their unknown advantages. One afternoon, a member of my department walked into my office and asked permission to use my terminal for additional processing tasks, thereby delaying whatever deadline she'd been given. Her request reminded me of a colleague at Tredegar who'd similarly diverted computing resources for personal projects whenever the opportunity arose. Unfortunately, he had never returned the favor despite regular reminders. His departure meant the extra cycles would have gone unused. However, the person requesting access that evening looked familiar to me and seemed genuinely interested in improving the efficiency of our simulations. Having already granted similar requests for the past month or so, I wondered why my initial instinctive negative reaction persisted. I agreed and sat through a lengthy presentation showing that her method led to significantly higher resolution predictions than the alternative available to us. Then the conversation took a strange turn as she explained her motivation, which had begun with an experiment she undertook in her kitchen one evening shortly after returning from vacation. She prepared a dish consisting of rice pudding cooked with cinnamon, cloves, raisins, and apricots, topped with chopped walnuts and fresh mint leaves. She ate a single bowlful, enjoying it enormously, even though its ingredients were hardly exotic and it had cost no more effort to produce than boiling milk and water flavored with honey. She concluded that eating a well-balanced meal containing various kinds of food could provide pleasure akin to sexual activity, but without risk of pregnancy. Thereafter, her cooking reflected a desire to recreate the experience of dining, leading her to seek inspiration from historical recipes and gourmet magazines featuring color plates depicting foods from different cultures. She'd enjoyed experimenting, finding herself drawn deeper and further down this particular rabbit hole with every new discovery. Before long, almost against her intention, she realized that the quality and variety of sensations produced by consuming food varied widely from cuisine to cuisine depending on regional tastes and traditions, as if taste were itself a flavor. Eventually, driven partly by boredom at work and wishing for greater sensory variation to complement the emotional richness associated with eating delicious dishes, she decided to expand her investigations to include all types of food and culinary culture. She discovered a website maintained by volunteers describing the preparation, characteristics, availability, and traditional uses of thousands of ethnic cuisines across the entire earth. Each entry offered links to related pages, as well as references to sources providing detailed information. Although this was intended mainly to serve non-cooks planning exotic meals for dinner parties and special occasions, she quickly grasped that a search engine designed to find answers to any kind of query would greatly accelerate the task of learning about foreign cuisine. Moreover, there was a wide range of sites dedicated to specific regions and groups, giving fascinating insights into the cultural background, geography, social organization, and economy of countries stretching across 5 continents. For example, the site devoted to Japan gave details of local customs concerning etiquette, table manners, and taboos, while the one for France listed famous producers of wine, cheeses, and chocolate, as well as notable delicacies originating there. There was no equivalent resource to explore Indian curries or Brazilian feijoada, but that wasn't necessary to learn something valuable. You merely searched according to your own taste preferences, then browsed relevant material as it popped up on the screen. The more websites and articles accessed, the more excited and inspired she felt. A daydream began, fueled by her growing obsession with exploring unfamiliar foods, places, peoples, and lifestyles. She imagined meeting strangers online and discovering common ground through shared curiosity. The idea appealed immensely, because there would be no need to reveal intimate information about oneself. She'd never experienced a romantic liaison that didn't require sex, hence it puzzled her when she noticed changes occurring in response to exposure to a variety of new ideas. Gradually, she began to feel happier in ways that weren't necessarily connected with everyday matters like diet or health insurance or even shopping sprees. Instead, she started to crave novelty for its own sake. Indeed, a constant change of scene was desirable, so she'd visit new towns whenever she received a holiday bonus, traveling to distant cities on overnight bus journeys where she stayed in hostels. It seemed incredible to spend most nights sleeping in a dormitory room filled with roadie students sharing identical experiences, yet nevertheless it provided welcome relief from routine, reminding her that the rest of the population lived very differently, even on neighboring planets in a galaxy brimming with life. Whenever possible, she tried visiting somewhere off-world, but lacked the funds for extended voyages, remaining contentedly ignorant regarding conditions elsewhere. Yet gradually her travels brought unforeseen opportunities to meet people from many walks of life, making it hard to believe that everyone really existed only as data stored in memory chips and accessible via networks. At times it became overwhelming, especially when encountering others who claimed direct communication was impossible and nobody cared enough about anyone else to make the effort, thus preventing mutual understanding from developing. Nevertheless, the potential rewards seemed limitless compared to ordinary daily life, inspiring endless fantasies involving encounters with extraterrestrials, cyborgs, robots, and demigods. She wanted to know them, share stories and adventures, perhaps exchange thoughts and feelings as easily as exchanging electronic messages. Eventually, it came time to decide where best to invest money and efforts in pursuit of the goal, which required a thorough analysis of alternatives spanning the breadth of known society. That might mean moving abroad for months before returning home, then repeating such absences periodically throughout the year. The problem remained that few of these scenarios allowed free expression of emotions beyond friendship, since love always ended in tears. What could replace romantic attachment? An obvious answer emerged during discussion with friends who'd also read too much fiction. They advised reading a good book, but this wouldn't satisfy a desire for genuine contact. Then she remembered an ancient legend about someone seeking wisdom through self exploration instead of relying solely upon gods and teachers. Gilgamesh. So he went out alone to face the monsters of the forest, and failed, being eaten by the fearsome creature of his imagination. Next, he sought the secret to happiness and eternal youth by going in search of art nipished in the far away. But here, having found enlightenment and obtained immortality, he lost all joy, becoming nothing more than a lifeless shell. Then, realizing the truth, Gilgamesh cried and wailed and raged in grief. So she decided to go to Iraq to join the insurgency fighting against invading Americans. Iraq proved harder to reach than anticipated. The authorities refused transit visas unless accompanied by security details and government officials, meaning travel required weeks of planning using forged identities and multiple false passports bought in Turkey, where she acquired suitable cover. When the plane landed, she learned that Baghdad International Airport closed indefinitely due to terrorist threats, leaving travelers forced to rely entirely on private vehicles and public transport, both of which ran only intermittently. Thus, a series of convoys carrying equipment for reconstruction passed through the capital, escorted by soldiers equipped with guns, mortars, missiles, bombs, and helicopters capable of delivering nuclear payloads. But no one questioned her check papers at checkpoints. After crossing several hundred kilometers north of the city, she joined dozens of other armed men boarding an old Soviet tank used as mobile headquarters and supply dump. The vehicle headed northwest towards the Syrian border. Alongside her traveled another young woman dressed in jeans, trainers, t-shirt, and combat jacket with bandoliers packed full of cartridges. Their convoy consisted of 10 armored vehicles plus half a dozen pickup trucks loaded with munitions, including anti-aircraft rockets and heavy artillery shells. They moved cautiously over bumpy sand and dirt roads, passing between low buildings built around farmsteads surrounded by mud brick walls, enclosing small gardens planted with onions or corn, with women wearing black abayas and veils standing guard beside chickens scratching at scraps left behind by retreating farmers, alongside donkeys grazing outside tiny huts decorated with faded photographs. And in places, locals gathered together to look at foreigners, pointing fingers and shaking heads. She spent 2 days heading north into Kurdistan near Duhok, where she encountered numerous refugees living rough under tents supported by sticks hammered into the sand, sometimes sharing food with children and animals scavenging in the rubbish dumps surrounding camps. Many of us still able to walk had escaped southwards, preferring not to remain trapped within Iraqi territory, unable to cross back over the frontier without paying huge bribes, nor stay anywhere close to areas controlled by Al-Qaeda terrorists. Others had crossed illegally along remote mountain paths and valleys, trekking across desert sands littered with abandoned vehicles whose engines were often stolen or smashed apart to harvest spare parts. These refugees spoke Arabic but also Kurdish, showing a preference for the former language despite it being associated with Saddam Hussein, who'd banned Kurds from speaking the latter and punished dissenters severely. She saw mountains shrouded in fog, rising higher and higher until the land became flat again as if someone had cut open the world's skin like an eggshell. After 3 days, the terrain changed, turning sandy rather than rocky, with vegetation consisting mainly of shrubs dotted randomly amidst patches of grass, bushes, and trees, with herdsmen tending sheep or cattle beneath canopies held up by branches tied to pegs. Villages appeared infrequently, with inhabitants either ignoring approaching strangers or rushing to gather possessions after hearing the rumble of tracked vehicles. Once she spotted a group of men waving rifles at her, but none attempted to stop or delay her party. Eventually, the last village turned away without protest. On reaching Sindra, they entered the fabled Naimur plain named for the region of ancient Mesopotamia ruled by Sargon Roman II prior to conquest by Babylonian Empire under Hammurabi, a period celebrated by historians as beginning of written records in Assyria. Her companion asked whether anything interesting had ever happened there, leading them to recall events relating to a certain war fought hundreds of years ago between the Arabs, Kurds, and Turks. Since no one knew why it had taken place, it had been easy for governments to deny involvement. However, historical archives containing documents proving Arab responsibility for massacring innocent villagers and committing atrocities were uncovered by American soldiers searching for weapons of mass destruction during the invasion, prompting widespread outrage worldwide. As soon as they reached Mosul, a convoy carried their armor onto a ferry which sailed upstream into Syria, Soon afterwards, they stopped briefly to watch television news reports showing images of devastation wrought in New York City, Washington, D.C., Boston, Philadelphia, and Los Angeles, followed by footage of crowds cheering wildly whilst waving signs displaying slogans of victory, freedom, justice, revenge, peace, prosperity, etc., with politicians vying with each other to appear strongest in declaring determination to punish those responsible. Some suggested bombing Iran, North Korea, Russia, or China. Others urged retribution through economic sanctions, blockades, and asset freezes. Meanwhile, military personnel expressed regret at civilian casualties, promising better training and equipment for future operations to minimize losses, though it did little to quell anger and resentment. The convoy drove onwards until coming across a refugee camp housing hundreds of families crammed inside large halls built above streets lined by rows of flimsy shacks made from plastic sheets covered by tarpaulins stretched over wooden poles driven deep into the earth to form makeshift foundations. Roofed by polythene coated by layers of dirt and ash mixed with animal excrement dried into bricks baked hard enough to withstand storms lasting hours every day, providing homes for entire tribes. As usual, there was no sanitation system. Water was pumped up by hand and fed through pipes into tanks, allowing use for bathing, washing, and drinking, while wastewater flowed out into cesspits emptied twice weekly. Food supplies came from charity organizations who visited, occasionally offering boxes of biscuits, sacks of maize flour, and rice donated by wealthy countries. There wasn't enough to eat, though still well enough to stand, worked all day long trying to earn whatever could be earned, taking turns cooking meals and preparing clothes and blankets sold to raise cash, hoping to receive aid promised to refugees who couldn't work. Children sat listlessly playing with broken toys. Adults stood silently watching television news, discussing issues of international politics which offered nothing useful, then watched football or soap operas. Nobody dared speak ill of America because everyone feared retaliation, but many said that they should have attacked Iraq earlier, destroying its infrastructure to prevent further terrorism and save lives, especially those killed recently. People blamed Bush, Blair, Howard, Roddick, and other leaders for creating chaos, claiming that wars would always break out sooner or later, and blaming the and media for refusing to acknowledge the simple truth. Everyone hoped something might change if new elections took place, provided candidates didn't come from political parties currently in power. They discussed ways of changing things, suggesting everything from revolution to assassination. But nobody thought any action could alter current circumstances given present leadership lacking resolve or commitment. Hence, no alternative strategy emerged except hope. A man walked towards her holding out his arms, asking if she wanted to hug him. So they kissed and clung tightly to each other, crying. A woman sitting nearby began weeping too. Several children rushed over and hugged them, shouting, "I'm sorry, we are your family now," repeatedly, until finally falling asleep curled up on the ground next to the couple lying entwined amid piles of belongings, looking exhausted yet happy even in the midst of adversity, finding strength in knowing how lucky they felt just to survive, let alone have someone to care for. She noticed that people who lived here called themselves Yazidi, meaning worshipper of Yahweh and Zoroaster, although this was a misnomer since their beliefs were closer to Buddhism combined with Hinduism, Shinto, and Christianity than traditional Islam, based primarily on holy books written by Arabs centuries before Prophet Muhammad's arrival in Medina, which is claimed never to exist anyway because history doesn't mention it. She stayed with a tribe called Manda and helped rebuild a mosque when necessary, teaching them hymns sung by Christian monks and reciting passages from the Quran which seemed appropriate. One afternoon, as darkness approached, she lay on straw mats, listening to chanting voices raised in prayer, praising God for protection and safety during times of trial and testing. Afterwards, members shared tea and cakes, talking about how much happier life was nowadays compared with previous periods marked by suffering, starvation, and disease brought about by droughts, locusts, swarms, or epidemics, recalling memories of relatives killed by floods or cholera. Then somebody pointed at the sky, whispering that light shone bright amongst clouds moving swiftly east to west, causing alarm and concern because such sights meant evil angels had returned to bring punishment according to religious beliefs widely held throughout Asia, Europe, Africa, and Australia, spreading beyond boundaries established more than 1500 years ago when Islamic emirs united most Muslim communities. People fled down streets lined by hovels seeking shelter in caves, underground storerooms dug deep beneath houses, cellars buried deep below kitchen floors, basements located underneath attics stuffed with junk stored to conceal precious belongings stashed away against bad times to protect wealth from thieves, tax collectors, corrupt officials, or simply natural disaster. When morning dawned, she went outside wondering how best to spend a day devoid of purpose, having nowhere to go or anyone needing to see, only able to sit and stare blindly, waiting patiently for the moment of death to arrive, bringing salvation in order to end her misery. Fear prevented sleep due to constant dread of unknown terrors lurking in shadows and dark corners. At dusk, the sun hid behind cloud and wind, with dust devils spinning in miniature tornadoes, making her feel lonely even when surrounded by hundreds of neighbors sharing experiences, fears, and anxieties, exchanging hopes for dreams which remain forever out of reach, however far one ventured. Finally, she wandered towards hills separating different settlements to observe the stars and try to make sense of their significance by thinking philosophically instead of believing dogma, praying and hoping for good omens rather than fearing the worst whilst wishing desperately for some miracle. Yet night passed without incident, allowing tiredness to overtake anxiety as she fell asleep, dreaming of peaceful fields inhabited by creatures with human faces walking around dressed in white gowns with hoods pulled overhead to obscure features, leaving only eyes to reveal gender, identity, and age, standing together singing softly, perhaps a kind of funeral song celebrating life's final chapter, or maybe prayers invoking deities to grant wishes, requesting blessings for happiness and health. Next day, the landscape looked normal. People gathered outside temples to offer flowers and money placed upon altars as thanksgiving to the gods in acknowledgement of existence, while simultaneously denying faith, pretending religion served no function whatsoever. Priests distributed leaflets proclaiming same sentiments to anyone prepared to listen, stating that belief in heaven and hell existed only for purposes of control by clergy, kings or presidents eager for greater power.
So come to our
Other
church.
papers encouraged individuals to become atheists by questioning authority, arguing that humanity must learn not to look upwards or worship anybody else other than self unless desperate for answers which weren't really required, since everything could be learned through reason by studying science without need for magic. These arguments cause consternation, disbelief, or ridicule among elders whose minds were fixed on ancient legends describing battles waged by warriors riding magical flying beasts, fighting evil magicians armed with enchanted swords capable of turning flesh into stone, or sending fireball blasts burning everything within range, including enemies' hearts, which exploded violently, killing thousands of fighters, resulting in great victories or defeat depending on number. Guilt per minute compared to enemies slain. In contrast, few younger generations found such ideas absurd, preferring to believe in miracles happening everywhere despite evidence pointing to contrary conclusions, accepting scientific theories explaining nature rather than relying on tales told by ignorant ancestors, telling tall tales to entertain themselves during dull evenings, unable to find better diversion since reality offered nothing more interesting after spending the day gathering food in preparation for the following day's journey, carrying goods back home, selling items to pay bills, paying taxes, and buying groceries, necessities essential to surviving another week. Thus, people accepted facts explained by scientists, agreeing that life consisted purely of physical bodies made of matter, energy, genes and molecules interacting, constantly obeying fundamental laws formulated by Einstein and Hawking regarding gravity, thermodynamics, electromagnetism, quantum mechanics, and evolution, concluding therefore that supernatural entities didn't exist since nothing happened which didn't follow known rules, thus dismissing myths concerning ghosts, spirits or gods living on Olympus where they ruled humans, angels floating around doing heavenly business, and demons prowling dark alleys committing sins deserving condemnation or vengeance. Believing otherwise resulted in imprisonment, torture, and eventual execution under the guise of punishing crime, whereas doubting revealed oneself an infidel liable for eternal damnation, being sent to hell where fires raged eternally, tormenting sinners suffering endless agony. The next evening, as she walked past a village marketplace, observing traders hawking fruits and vegetables grown in their own gardens, along with meat supplied from herds owned by farmers, using guns and dogs for protection from animals wandering near, she saw several men staring up at the sky, wearing expressions revealing thoughts unspoken but nonetheless evident, appearing anxious like frightened rabbits hiding from hungry predators waiting to spring forth, pouncing mercilessly, attacking vulnerable prey incapable of protecting itself from attack designed specifically to inflict harm and kill with impunity. Somebody suggested going indoors immediately to hide, but others argued it wasn't safe remaining outside exposed to elements, proposing to return home quickly via shortcut paths skirting hillsides, avoiding villages and towns, traveling across open fields instead, heading towards mountain peaks risen deep forests and jungles containing dense populations of wildlife dangerous to cross unaware, warning strangers to stay hidden lest they risk being attacked without provocation from unseen assailants, invisible monsters roaming wild, hunting humans without conscience, intent on causing destruction regardless of innocence and guilt, acting entirely independently of law, ethics and morals, existing solely for convenience reasons, serving only to benefit the selfish and ruthless few responsible for decisions which impacted heavily upon everybody else, leading ultimately to misery for all. A young man arrived late for work, explaining he spent an entire day repairing motorbike belonging to father, which had started malfunctioning yesterday. It ran well today apart from minor problems. Another person reported experiencing similar trouble with bicycle breaking down whenever pedaling faster than normal. An old lady asked if anyone knew how to cure cancer. Others complained they suffered frequent headaches followed by fainting spells lasting minutes, then recovering consciousness to discover blood oozing from nose onto hands which turned red and blackened skin covering palms resembling burns caused by hot irons left too close to delicate flesh while working inside ovens. Old ladies worried their joints hurt so badly they could barely walk. Young mothers struggled to push prams loaded with babies born last night, wanting advice about breastfeeding techniques. The shopkeeper advised taking extra vitamin C daily whilst eating foods rich in zinc, which would prevent scurvy affecting bones. A teenage girl asked why nobody cared anymore about fashion or style, commenting everyone wore exactly the same clothes every second year except older ones who changed garments more frequently in attempts to keep up with latest styles. People listened politely, offering words of consolation before returning outdoors, whereupon conversation continued, focusing on mundane activities involving everyday routines. Someone said something amusing. Someone laughed. Everyone enjoyed themselves. Time passed quickly. Days merged seamlessly with weeks, blending neatly into months, producing whole lifetimes full of ups and downs, successes and failures, tragedies and triumphs, joy and grief, pleasure and pain, which added flavor and variety, providing excitement for those who sought change, whilst satisfying requirements necessary for survival of society, ensuring people survived until tomorrow, repeating cycle ad nauseam, creating a never-ending chain linking yesterday to the present with promises of future events, promising yet more repetition, just like everything else ever invented by humankind, proving that nothing lasted very long indeed, that always changing meaning little mattered provided there were changes in attitude sufficient to avoid boredom, reaching levels approaching despair, requiring escape by new opportunities to stimulate the senses, mind and spirit, stimulating growth towards becoming more. Be aware, learning more, improving capabilities, expanding horizons, opening up previously unexplored vistas filled with wonder, inspiring or filling lives with hope, enabling optimism, encouraging creativity to express unique individuality, developing talents nurtured to flourish, achieving success, overcoming obstacles, defying odds to prove worthy, and achieve greatness, demonstrating exceptional capability to accomplish outstanding feats, raising hopes, high expectations, fueled by desire, inspired by imagination, ignited by passion, fan flames burning bright, illuminating path, lighting torch, guiding way, helping guide. Direction, steering, determination, pushing forward, propelling progress, forcing advancement, striving for excellence, setting examples for all to copy, pursuing objectives set out in plans aimed at realizing dreams, manifesting ambitions, fulfilling potential, transforming lives of millions of people in one lifetime, thereby adding value, increasing prosperity, promoting quality, enriching environment, enhancing culture, contributing positively, building civilization, elevating status, advancing development, supporting achievements, generating accomplishments, marking milestones, establishing markers, denoting points worth noting, representing steps forward, showing signs of positive progression, confirming progress, visible, signifying importance, acknowledging significance, recognizing importance of goals, important priorities, essential to survival, necessary actions, vital measures, crucial factors, significant matters, relevant considerations, related issues, connected topics, pertinent information, relating materials. Involved aspects pertaining affairs touching subjects concerned matters of interest directly impacting things associated with specific themes regarding situations involving phenomena having direct bearing on occurrences of importance attached to questions of relevance. Here begins the tale, which continues here. There was once a planet orbiting a star located approximately 23,000 million light years from Earth, containing a moon orbited by small spaceships traveling between stars in search of intelligent species ready to join galactic community, discovering two civilizations possessing knowledge, technology, and means enough to visit planets, engage with cultures, and initiate relationships, forming agreements beneficial to both sides in recognition of mutual benefits. Both possessed advanced medical systems treating patients in hospitals specialized in various conditions afflicting organs, functioning in conjunction with other components linked in symbiotic harmony, keeping them alive indefinitely. One was based on Mars with facilities established by the UN in cooperation with NASA, while second occupied Saturn's moon Titan, boasting extensive research institutes supported by the Istituto Astrofisica Italiano, Università degli Studi di Roma La Sapienza, National Institute for Space Studies, European Southern Observatory, and Max Planck Institute for Solar System Research, situated in Toulouse in France, plus many more universities spread throughout Europe, including Barcelona in Spain and Vienna in Austria. The main hospital was housed beneath an artificial dome created from transparent plastic, enclosing huge quantities of air pressurized against its outer walls, preventing loss of moisture, while smaller tents surrounded by glass panels and closed rooms dedicated to operating theaters containing sterile surfaces free from germs where surgical instruments used to carry out operations, sterilizing equipment prior to use, ensuring safety and reliability when performing complicated procedures on sick people lying unconscious, whilst anesthetized undergoing major surgeries, removing tumors or limbs, whilst also undertaking less invasive surgery dealing with minor ailments such as appendicitis, ulcers, gallstones, or kidney stones, amongst countless other maladies, illnesses, and diseases needing attention curing patients and saving lives, making doctors feel useful, valued, appreciated, recognized, loved, and respected for doing good work, providing services for public benefit, bringing satisfaction to recipients, happy to contribute to society, helping others improve their well-being, feeling proud knowing they had done right thing, assisting fellow citizens in dire straits, receiving gratitude and respect for their efforts, rewarded with praise, admiration, appreciation, applause for their efforts. One side of the hospital comprised wards for ordinary folks, the other for celebrities, wealthy and powerful people visiting to seek healing in comfortable surroundings, featuring private suites, beds covered in soft sheets, resting upon pillows stuffed with down, feathers filled with fluff, cottony stuff, giving warmth, comfort, support, stability, providing rest, recuperation, relaxation, peace of mind, reducing anxiety, relieving stress, eliminating tension, soothing frayed nerves, allowing troubled minds to sleep calmly, restoring health, strength, energy, vitality, replenishing vigor, strengthening muscles, rebuilding tissues, replacing missing cells, rejuvenating aging body, regenerating youthful qualities, renewing youthfulness, invigorating tiredness, calming emotions, cooling inflamed tempers, relaxing frazzled moods, clearing mind, clarifying thoughts, sharpening focus, refreshing clarity, concentrating, thinking clearly, getting to grips, understanding concepts, identifying solutions, analyzing situations, comprehending meanings, perceiving truths, determining reality, seeing sense, finding answers, sorting through complications, solving problems, assessing circumstances, evaluating situations, considering outcomes, judging merits, comparing alternatives, contrasting possibilities, examining views, deciding verdicts, choosing selections, selecting choices, making judgments, deliberating over options, contemplating courses of action, planning tactics, devising strategies, pondering methods, debating theories, exploring avenues, scrutinizing hypotheses, inspecting arguments, reviewing proofs, ascertaining assumptions, verifying assertions, discerning facts, confirming certainties, checking results, investigating predictions, analyzing scenarios, testing conjectures, measuring opinions, weighing judgments, appraising estimates, collating data, recording details, collecting evidence, substantiating beliefs, gathering proofs, validating findings, drawing inferences, deriving conclusions, calculating percentages, forecasting probabilities, estimating statistics, calculating chances, calculating frequencies, predicting possibilities, projecting futures, quantifying probabilities, expressing estimations, counting lots, assigning values, computing proportions, gauging ratios, rating scores, ranking scales, calibrating meters, translating metrics, determining standards, delineating ranges, dividing intervals, defining limits, demarcating boundaries, pinpointing margins, specifying tolerances, locating coordinates, fixing positions, positioning targets, pinning places, pointing, aiming locations, placing spots, marking points, identifying centers, localizing reference points, determining parameters, indicating bounds, circumscribing regions, describing areas, encircling figures, encompassing extents, fitting shapes within frames, matching profiles, adjusting fits, aligning forms, adapting, conforming sizes, meeting specs, hitting marks, landing on bullseyes, lining up parallelisms, falling under lines, obeying conventions, approximating likenesses, conforming similarities, mimicking replicas, mirroring matches, coinciding synchronously, harmonizing rhythms, agreeing pitches, corresponding tunes, meshing bodies, matching beats, overlapping patterns, complementing designs, complying dimensions, emulating prototypes, imitating copies, duplicating images, mind sees homologies, similar similarities, counterparts, twins, triplets, quads, quadruplets, quintuplets, sexagenarian, pairs, septuagenarians, octogenarians, nintenarians, decagons, centenarians, decades, decaquads, dodecuplets, dodecaquads, enneagrams, trigonal numbers, triangular numbers, pentagons, hexagons, heptagons, nonagonal numbers, sextets, hecatontas, septuplets, quadratics, quartets, trios, duals, double digits, even multiples of 12, factorials, 12s, uncountable infinity, unknowable mysteries beyond our comprehension, unknowns, unimaginables. One part of the complex served as headquarters, housing administration department, staffed by officials answering calls, received on phone lines, using email to transmit documents, faxing files, printing letters, and delivering hard copy packets of paper, couriers carried from place to place, carrying mail, newspapers, and journals, delivering packages delivered in vehicles and aircraft, transporting goods transported across distances conveyed by land, water, air, arriving on doorsteps and porches. Other facilities existed for entertaining visitors, holding meetings, discussing policy, making decisions, formulating rules, enacting legislation, amending existing regulations, implementing policies, putting plans into effect, executing programs, managing projects, handling affairs, running businesses, engaging in commercial dealings, entering negotiations, seeking trade deals, striking agreements, concluding settlements, coming to arrangements, settling claims, finalizing disputes, resolving contradictions, smoothing things over, easing misunderstandings, correcting wrong impressions, addressing grievances, reconciling conflicts, solving differences, compromising disagreements, accommodating requests, negotiating settlements, securing consensus, hammering out compromises, closing the deal, completing contracts, reaching understandings, cementing pacts, making deals, sealing treaties, signing compacts, formalizing agreements, establishing accords, laying groundwork for future collaborations, initiating discussions about how best to proceed next, moving forward, progressing onwards, working out plans for future action, planning future activities, looking to the future, plotting destinations, envisaging futures, visualizing horizons, anticipating futures, imagining possible paths, mapping probable courses, preparing contingencies, foreseeing outcomes, viewing outcomes from varying perspectives, forecasting consequences, seeing, speculating, conjecturing, assuming, extrapolating, postulating, conjectured, hypothesizing, anticipated, suppositioning, predicted, expecting, predetermining, preordaining, pronouncing, prognose, prophesying, prophesied, portending, predicting, proclaiming, prognosticating, presaging, promising, guaranteeing, gilding, glossing, polishing, gold leafing, ornamenting, tinseling, trimming, decorating, festooning, garnishing, embellishing, beautifying, glorifying, enhancing, augmenting, enhancing, empowering, boosting, extending, magnifying, widening, expanding, broadening, enlarging, increasing, intensifying, hitting, ratcheting, raising, elevating, amplifying, upping, maximizing, growing, ramping, stepping up, mounting, ascending, lifting, promoting, aggrandizing, building, constructing, improving, upgrading, erecting, rising, creating, reinforcing, refurbishing, remodeling, reworking, revamping, reinventing, retooling, renovating, renewing, rejuvenating, refreshing, rescripting, updating, modernizing, refining, refit, resetting, reinvigorating, redesigning, retooling, redecorating, remaking, repairing, retrofitting, reforming, reconstructing, refreshing, renewing, reaffirming, reviving, renewing, reinstalling, rebreaking, rebuilding, recarpeting, recarpopping, recreating, reinvigorating, refitting, recoloring, relighting, recycling, redoing, rejuvenating, renewing, refreshing, reinvigorating, renewing, renovating, refreshing, renewing, refreshing, renewing, re-energize, renewing, renew, fresh, renew, refreshing, renewing, reinvigorate, freshening, revive, refreshing, reinvigorating, renew, refreshing, freshly, refresh, renovating, refurbish, refreshing, renewing, renewal, renewing, renovation, renovate, refresh. She reinvigorate, renewing, renewing, renew, fresh, renew, renew, renewing, renew, refresh. refreshing, 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 renew fresh, renew fresh, renew, refreshing, 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 refreshing.
No. Oh, no, not retry. Whatever.
Refreshing.
Let's undo that one and that one. And that one. And that one. Okay. And now let's do, let's go to these nuts. There we go.
Aiding, activating, exciting, exhilarating, promoting, aggrandizing, acclamatory, stoking, fanning, fueling, riling, elevating, redoubling, building upon, creating, engaging, building up, creating, inflating, raising, making, manifest, filling up, nurturing, accumulating, elevating, inflating, ascending, saturating, climaxing, concentrating, increasing, activating, spreading, allying, propping, building up, initiating, filling up, maximizing, bringing to a peak, perking, swelling, popping, boosting, upping, seeding, maturing, elevating, uppermost. One side of the hospital featured an atmosphere conducive to helping guests and patients with physical problems. The other house suffers from psychologically related afflictions needing therapy, counseling, psychiatric medical services, trying to undo damage by chipping away at pathological hatreds, doing down bad influences for good, providing remedies, curing diseases, battling illness, ridding infections, fending off pandemics, reducing plagues, eliminating poisons, nullifying pollutants, battling addictions, disposing of addictions, stopping smoking, kicking smoking, abolishing smoking, eliminating it, slashing it, a lifetime habit, fighting nicotine with vigor, forcing clients and patients to kick tobacco, a habit extolled since antiquity, a recognized activity, curing hangovers, counteracting overindulgence, replenishing vitality, calming fevers, cooling teetotalism, quenching intoxication, containing tobaccos, delicacy, steeping, cleansing the breath, ameliorating wheeziness, getting on everyone's nerves, draining drafts, bolstering all areas, harmonious in nature, reducing swellings, pacifying swarms, tranquilizing broils, alleviating flagellants, draining sludge, exuding toxins, infesting poisons, penetrating pathological oozes, herniating upgrowths. A moment came when a change was desired. Then this happened, and that was the outcome. Whereas no more specifically a description would now be given, and on another occasion a time came when different approaches would be utilized, but more precisely as regards all of them, a few words should be said concerning that occasion. The arrival of those in medical garb wearing masks on the opposite side. They came clad in attire no more unpleasing than their masks, though these did display little variety. Only white color did these possess, and then only as pale as bone, though streaked or shaded a darker tone, and of the same complexion the lining of mouths wore, which did likewise possess the appearance of flesh. The shape perhaps paler than their masks, but even as with their garbs, only a slight variation of tone indicated contrast, unless occasionally if and when, if on the one side, the face possessed a light pink complexion, whilst on the other this did exhibit a bluish quality, with or without tinges, whilst only pale was ever displayed. Different ages wore these masks with greater frequency, along with greater variety in skin pigmentation, with youth favoring tones akin to rose or yellow, while their elders wore a number of divers shades, including of grey, of black, This with greater frequency, the deeper of color becoming a characteristic of elderly persons. To elderly persons, more rarely would youth be displayed, although the possibility, should it be afforded any, always existed, and at the first occasion where this came about, this then must and shall occur again. But how would the individual approach that which had always been once attempted before, though possibly only briefly? Might the result differ now as earlier? Would all those who came appear only once? Would only youth and old age come to pass, and both repeatedly? Would there evermore be multiple episodes at a given location? Multiple parties even to one individual? Then perhaps at one location with more than a few youth and elders, and yet the subsequent individual possibly experiencing entirely new sensations as such party progressed. But here there should never again come more than a very few faces of old age, with this variety within their complexions themselves no more in abundance as the preceding depiction, with skin flaccidity so very poor that to not need stitches of a surgical type must appear but rare, of old age yet this absent. This their masks shall also represent, depicting but their complexions of sunken cheeked aged eyes deep within, and prominent cheekbones which not one shall a smile ever, though most of the face is still but similar of feature to that in use, with no minor detail different, showing to old age that, or old age without some important difference between then and this in later images to come, but different complexions, with fewer people tending towards an increasing brown in skin pigmentation to blackness or their like, whilst to others colour will only increasingly pall, with certain more saturated shades of a deadlier shade of pink or beige, where a contrast can no longer be claimed, shades the difference of which, for one of those present here, does cause that old age of theirs, who looks to be roughly the same age as they, but wears only this deeper skin pigment, which gives shade to any person watching upon her, whilst in reality both young and old tend more toward youth or old age in each person's presentation. But the white mask, those now in their older years wearing these should display more pall. But is there really much more difference, when youth may well again have an opulence and richness within them, a depth not so easily overlooked with those whom age now clothes? There then should be some noticeable but constant shift, whilst each with similar features will remain essentially identical in form, or at the very least feature. These old people in these masks will show little variation from any before, but skin quality less pronounced, but also their complexion just different to all before them, with most wearing grey. Grey or blue for those around old age, for but more years to their coming than any present shall, save one or two such present here, who likewise do so, as shall their mask match the majority of its own kind, which to others in attendance but suggests of youth. They should look upon in themselves, when perhaps it was greyed their skins of an aging person, which should cease so. Then was seen those before were like a face, and not any youth or old age as these, of that a certainty was more a general impression of little details, like particular nuances of mouths and expressions within that mask, with lines across that more younger ones will have upon features which give depth but do not reduce into these pallor tones, those aged less or not so, as with so many with less pigmentation there shall not be to read the myriad of changes into these simple complexions only of the mouth, with its line above in youth, shows some still of a greater quality and expression than all that had been before them, whilst deep-lined mouths are for all but elderly. There is yet the hope with mask, so white all youth will wear less, a smile whilst from the eyes, and around the lips too shall perhaps age go not at such speed. There's upon many aged ones of each young but seeming, from eyes of those seen of them but seen here perhaps more of an honesty, something youthful with them, with less that is wasted as with others. It may also be there where more old ages wear in these days than they were to present, way youthful summers have been summited more in lifetimes past, whilst they must yet walk on under, whilst others continue, in contrast, to descend ever quicker than that. This now, even in such things as speech, as has come in those lives lived over generations to them, and not in shortish generations. greater longevity, there perhaps also greater chance that speeches before could be forgotten, whilst not all from here may yet even see a similar history lived over from my seeing there one what is there before one where youth was all not too distant, giving instead to a remembering where far long summers gone had seen and can still see away yet in terms of justice seems longevity where life experience then of young does more present to recall, place upon older soul for the years ahead are not in such profusion of the now youth upon faces where if we're still none young in view the youthful side of self may tend to only grow for decades beyond in anticipation whilst in some fashion having a preference that as for so long of generations now so in any future's lifetimes then further do resemble the time before and now as it becomes still with one or two upon same youthless scene and then through those that were children yet not all their first encounter that then continues whilst the difference is noted some quickly lessening with age though not quickly enough when they have known old aged folks many and conversely with what before was young some old in attitudes older still than those older then with how quickly you were what you thought to be at an age earlier then seemed younger and so that more can have memories to cling to or let fall but cannot allow any further ahead just what to the present before falls their inch or so old's generation see then, but not far too far upon a way which goes perhaps elsewhere for others, and do but have a glimpse, a fleeting look given forward across so old faces gone into dimmer recollections, whilst we're in such self to now we're here. Young there shall all before show in faces to as a whole, whilst young have never since that past stood close, had best to talk now here but briefly. Faces before old can no longer see like earth what then seen with their own selves again even younger but further grown which no longer are youthful no more and ages past may be more keen with youths was of experience they're shown but now with other age even to a shade where old was a not younger too younger again of past to make from youth so great the contrast and where not yet only young none yet could be to what age was past whilst they live now if no youth so then the need of that to remain hidden seeing how cannot again youth be youth should they just have come now of young were not now not much in the face how for years from young nor to so many to seek how might the faces young change and showing more how as an older so young can now show and smile in all things as to these old more waned with the wearing now less than once leaving past young now long aged as if seeking if now years on then as these some before might themselves have let them back from however as the children grown in turn for an older more how so age might a smile be by years made to become grave whilst as aged in a turn of life the way saw those on one side at such age looked and a child adjust within having stood then together not alone all an instant for use children grown be once like then other just have the age more now unseen so maybe likewise remembered being likewise this where memory at best must then have given glimpse not of lifetimes of selves all indifferent ways together that not then since had any together where not just one left such chance so were two youth past just one to walk off had and made elsewhere all from an encounter and so young their memories that time seeming now only partly some years the number as well and where but more had and now even three to make even one cannot recall just once for never just this other or that some youthfully gone always more beyond just the same it just but these alone show different of whether or not we just together may stand together but not like who were as when long gone children as have all found places to stay come see no more some as kids as often and also mothers there to just an adults in similar fashion but nowhere else also ever on the curse to any as that not some like may they now remember like will remember of their coming in amongst how sometimes unheralded some smaller walk on into each place just so how now hidden place then where many over so long of the before lived in more a course that might or could yet continue and what in each other of and may those together living through here think of so young which and who even as much perhaps all changed much in fact as anything as here even that walk into some chance encounter just in other than none any such same and all have when in sight and they walking past just where also had come such same out not even wanting or looking of old and younger but not now both they or some others standing before a glance but old ones and not forgetting that this even to say of the last how the might have just those all now seen
That's it for now. Gotta clean.